I can't think of a better time to be looking at Microsoft as they just announced last night at about 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, their latest results. So we kind of have information on both. We prepared for Q2. We knew it was coming. Didn't know how much information they would have ready for us. They actually had quite a bit. So I'll talk a little bit about, I've listened to both of them and share a little bit of that. But of course, the core of this purpose of our webinar today is to help you walk through a simple tool that will help you to be more comfortable around listening to these earnings calls. I call them kind of that hidden gem. You know, these earnings calls are something that happens on a very regular basis. Yet many of us don't engage in them. And when we do engage in them, sometimes it's challenging to kind of capture what's the strategic focus of the company and how can I understand their financial performance with greater clarity. So that's what we're going to try and do as we get going today. But just to make sure we're comfortable using the tools, let's do this. Open up your chat box. Let's make sure that's open and make sure it's set to everyone. What I'd like you to do is just in the chat box, just send where you're calling in from. Those that have been with us before are familiar with this kind of approach. I like to kind of get a feel for who's in the room or who's on the call, I guess I should say today. So where are you calling in from? My team and I are just south of Salt Lake City, Utah here, where we have been pelted with snow over the last number of months. Best snow year ever. Still want to come out. We have a few of our ski resorts that are still open. It's been incredible, the amount of snow we've had, and we need it here in the Northwest here as we've been going through some droughts here. So looks like we got people from all over. We've got some India. Welcome, welcome. Good to have you here. Many of us from the United States, Germany. Excellent. Good to have everybody here and with us. Well, thank you. Want to make sure that's working as Bailey described. We'll be using that throughout our training today as a resource to ask questions as we kind of go through our program today. Well, another tool I'm going to use a little bit is the polling tool. So let me just ask you this question. My question is this the first time, you should see a poll, that you've attended What the CEO Needs You to Know earnings call webinar? No worries. If it is your first time, great to have you. We're excited to have you here. As you're answering that, let me kind of give a little bit of why we do these. We do this every single month. It's a chance for us, first of all, to allow those that have participated in our program to continue to practice the tools they learn in our Building Business Acumen program by listening to these calls. How do I use the tools I got from our program and practice using them? It's also a way for those that are new to this topic to get more comfortable and more familiar with how to use these calls as a way to really differentiate yourself within your role. Build your credibility, build your career, and build your company is a big part of what we're trying to do here. So it happens every single month. We do a different call, a different company every single month. And as many of you are aware, today we're going to do Microsoft. So it looks like we're done there. I'm going to go ahead and share the results here. It looks like, boy, 63% of you are, this is your first time. So welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Hopefully I'll create enough interest that you'll say to yourself, you know what? I want to do this. I want to practice using this tool to help build my business and financial acumen within your organization. Maybe you're part of a publicly traded company. Another common way in which people have an interest around these calls is if I'm in a sales role and I'm selling into publicly traded company. I can't think of a better way to differentiate yourself than to be able to understand your customer, what their strategy is, what they're focusing on, and then help the person you're selling into make the business case as to why a partnership with your business will drive their results. If you can speak to their outcomes, their goals, their objectives, then you move from that sales individual to that truly trusted partner. And that's a big part of it. And the last group that typically wants to join in here is maybe you want to look at this from your personal investment strategy. You want to understand the fundamentals of business, understand the companies you're investing in, and this resource can be a help to you. So good to have you here. Welcome. Grateful to have everybody here. Well, let's go ahead and jump in and get going for today. So I'm going to start with my second question. It's another poll question. And the question is, you're coming to a webinar on how to listen to earnings calls. So my question to you is, when's the last time you've listened to an earnings call? Now, don't worry, it's 100% anonymous. If you've never had a chance to listen to them, that's not a big deal. Some of you maybe, you know what, Brent, I've already listened to some of them this year. Some, it's been at least last year was the last time I did. You know what, Brent, it's been a while. Or you know what, I've never had a chance to do that. Or I love that even when we have it every month. I'd rather go to the dentist than go through these. These earnings calls happen on a quarterly basis with publicly traded companies. They last anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour and a half. Most commonly, they're about 1 hour of time. This is where executives get a chance to communicate to the market their financial performance on a quarterly basis or on a year-to-date basis. Obviously, here at Microsoft, the information that I have prepared is around their Q2, which ended just a few months ago. Well, they then announced last night, and the question really was, are they going to give us enough information the moment they announce that we could go ahead and incorporate it into the call? And we just decided to go forward with Q2. So I'm going to give you a link. Again, you're going to hear a lot about Q2, a little bit about Q3, and they'll give you a link where you can go through and look at that on yourself. But this is a chance where companies get a chance to kind of look at how they're currently performing, where they want to go, and how they're going to get there. It looks like as a group, it's many of you, 45% of you listened to them this year. 2% said, you know what, I'd rather go to the dentist. Well, hopefully I create enough interest that you say, you know what, I'm going to take some time to kind of move forward with this tool that we're going to give you today. So let me give you some statistics as you think about business and the understanding of individuals within their companies, or even as you look at your customers that you might be working with. This stat comes from the Harvard Business Review, where they looked at how much information do employees typically understand around their core strategies of a company. And they found that 95% of employees don't understand their company's strategy. That's a pretty significant. Now, you may say, Brent, at my company, we have a lot of attention around our key strategies. We're very aligned. I know what our company's trying to do, and I know how I can impact that. Well, let's look at this next statistic. About 90% of employees don't understand their company's important business metrics. If I was to ramble through your company's key metrics, EBITDA, free cash flow, return on capital employed, would these be metrics you understand what they are? Do you understand why they're important? And most importantly, what can you do to impact them? Well, that's what Acumen Learning does, is we help employees understand how your company makes money, and then how you impact the money-making process. How can you make better decisions within your role? Well, imagine if you're the CEO of Microsoft, where you got hundreds of thousands of employees. Satya Nadella, who's their CEO of this major, well-known, well-recognized brand, founded in 1975, one of the most recognized brands around, right? As of June 30th of 2022, they had 221,000 employees, billions of customers from more than 249 countries, offices in more than 100 countries. This is a significant, massive company. And you look at those two statistics, 95% of employees potentially may not understand your strategy. And then 90% of employees might not understand these key metrics and measures that you're talking about. So the real question as you think about these earnings calls is to ask yourself, what does the CEO want you to know? What is it that they need you to know? Well, that's the question to be thinking about. And particularly, who is he talking about? Well, what is it I want my employees to know? What is it I want my customers to know? As you think about Microsoft and their innovation and the new technologies, man, if you haven't looked at them in a while, I'm very used to Microsoft. There's Windows, Microsoft Office. I'm familiar with Azure, their cloud platform. But to see what they're doing around AI, you may or may not know their partnership with OpenAI, which are the ones who created ChatGPT, if you're familiar with that. It's incredible what they're starting to do and the innovation. So what is it they want their customers to know about their business? And then, of course, most importantly, what about their shareholders? How should their shareholders think about their strategy, what they're trying to accomplish, where they're trying to go? Well, that's what these earnings calls provide. So here's my, not only that, is what is you need your partners to know as well. So here's my commitment to you as we go through this. I'm going to give you a simple process. 3 simple steps: prepare, analyze, and apply. Now, as Bailey shared with you, at the end of this, we'll give you a link. You can access all this information. Just kind of sit back, enjoy the ride. Don't worry about taking a lot of notes. If you want to, feel free. But we're going to give you a tool. And I'm just going to walk you through that tool by using Microsoft as the example. So my commitment to you as you go through this is as you commit to do this on a quarterly basis, it absolutely will build your credibility. It will build your career, and it will build your company's performance. You will absolutely differentiate yourself. What we find, we do about 1,000 sessions at least per year, different companies, different industries. And those companies who take the tools that I'm going to share with you today, and they use them on a quarterly basis, those employees will absolutely differentiate themselves. We have employees say, you know what, I actually got a promotion because of this. That ability to step away from what your day-to-day activity is, see the big picture of the company and be able to execute around that. That's what listening to these earnings calls can do for you. So with that, let me just walk through the 3-step process by starting with prepare. As I've already kind of described, let's do a quick earnings call 101. Basically, there's 2 parts to an earnings call. Typically, the first part, about 15 to 20 minutes, is where your executive team will communicate to the market their financial performance. They're going to kind of describe how they did. They're going to describe what changes they've implemented, and they're going to describe what they're going to do in the future. So it's kind of where are we currently at, where do we want to go, and how are we going to get there? And about 20 minutes to 30 minutes into it, that shifts. And at that shift, what happens is analysts will get a chance to answer these questions. Ask questions. These analysts come from all the major large financial institutions, companies like Barclays, like Wells Fargo, these major investment firms that track the stock. They're going to come and they're going to ask clarifying questions. Their whole purpose is to get clarity around what the company's trying to do so that they can then make a recommendation to their investors as to whether they hold on to the stock, whether they sell the stock, or whether they buy the stock. Now, there's other criteria. There's about 5 criteria, but for basics, that's what they're going to kind of recommend. So these calls, as I said, happen on a quarterly basis. They're a great chance to understand what the company's trying to do and then apply it. What can I do about their strategy, et cetera? So in the prepare phase, there's 3 things you've got to do. Number 1 is you've got to access their call or transcript. Now, it's very easy to do this. If you just, I should have used Bing. Man, I should have just used Bing because that's Microsoft's product. But there's this other website you may be familiar with called Google. And all you do is start typing in the company you want to look at. That's the easiest way. Now, you can go to their website. Every company has their website, investor relations. You go to their investor relations, you're looking for one of 2 things. You're looking at like an annual report if it's a full year, or you're looking just at their quarterly results, okay? Now, you'll notice it's already starting to populate. It says Microsoft earnings call. So let me just kind of hit that. Let's see where we go. Now, up until last night at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, there was no Q3 information. And basically, all you had was the Q2. Well, as you see, there was a little bit of data here talking about their stock price, a little information. But if I scroll down, I'm looking for their company in particular, and you'll see a Microsoft investor homepage. There's some kind of third party, CNBC, Yahoo Finance, who kind of talk about it. Anyways, any of these can kind of guess, but I like to look for the company itself, and I know it's an event, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Microsoft Investor Relations Events. I click on that, and I'm there. Now, this just came out last night. After the call, they put all this stuff up. So you want the latest and greatest? Here's what you're going to do. I'm going to put it in the chat box right now. Here's where you want to look at. I didn't have time to put all that together last night. But I did pull a few pieces in there, but that's where you can access that. Right here, though, what's interesting is not only you see the most recent quarterly information, but I can actually jump back here, and here's what was available up until last night as far as their most recent earnings call. You have a webcast. That's where they're actually on it's the report. Now, if it's prior to the call, you would register for that webcast. You would click on this, and as it opens, you would go in and register for it. And then it makes it available. Since I have already listened to it, I've already registered, it actually recognizes my login. And right there, I hit play, and that's the call. That's the call that they had in Q2. So again, going back to the information that we had before, I click right here, I get their most recent earnings call, and that just happened last night. April 25th, 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. It's all there. Well, not only will they have the webcast itself, but they also will have in their PowerPoint, that's going to be a slide deck. So kind of their slide information about what happened in their company. So you can kind of scan through the slide. And I love the slides because it gives you a lot of summarized information. And I pulled one or two of these in here for purposes of our workshop today. I can actually go back to their website and I got a transcript. This is the actual transcript. Now, this is what they put together. And then once they get the full communication with all the all the analyst questions, they'll include that as well. This is just their prepared remarks because it's so soon since the call happened ending at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time last night. And so they'll add in the information from the analysts as well. So that's what you want to access. Now, it's prior to the call. You won't have anything other than a link to log into the call. Once the calls happen, they're going to give you the press release. If they have slides, they'll give you slides, etc. So the second step of the prepare phase, you got to review past information. Now, for some of you may say, Brent, this is my first time ever doing this. I don't have past information. Well, as I just showed you on that same website, you can actually go to a prior quarter and actually capture what happened in Q2 if you wanted to do that. If not, once you've gone through one of these, the tool that I'm going to give you will become that resource that you can review your notes. Because once it's completed, you'll have some nice information on the most recent quarter, what happened. So as you listen to the next quarter, you can kind of review those notes and say, okay, what did they say they were going to do? So when you listen to the call, you can say, did they actually do that? The last thing I recommend is to meet with your team. What do I mean by that? A great way to build your credibility and build your capability around this is to do it with somebody else. Now, if you're in a management role, get your team together, listen to the call and walk through the tool together. If you're just an individual contributor, get with a colleague, do it together. What you'll find is you'll learn from each other as you kind of listen to the call together and say, so what stood out to you? What are the key metrics or measures they're focused on? Well, what is the strategy moving forward? It's a great way to kind of build your understanding together. So folks, that's the prepare phase. You got to locate it. You got to then review your notes and then do it with somebody else. The majority of the tool focuses around how do you analyze, how do you capture the information from these calls. So let's jump into that. The first thing I want to do before we do that, open up your chat box. And for those that have been through our course, let's just review a simple framework. This framework is a great resource to help you assess the strategic focus of the company. For those that have been in our program, you'll be familiar with this 5-driver model. 5 fundamental drivers every company focuses on: their cash, profit, assets, growth, and people. So the idea is, how do I use this framework to assess what are they strategically talking about? Now, the foundation of the first 3 drivers are the 3 financial statements. When people think business or financial acumen, that's what they typically think of. But in the end, understanding more about these drivers, what are the key metrics around each driver, and how is the company impacting these drivers is vitally important. So to review it just quickly, we talk about the importance of cash in business. A very common phrase is cash is blank. Put it in my chat box. Cash is king. Yes, queen, royalty. Some have even said it's the oxygen supply of a company. So if a company starts to run out of cash, they really struggle. Yeah, the blood of a company. Cash is the blood or the oxygen for a business. That being said, if you look at Microsoft, they've got a tremendous amount of cash. And not only that, they have about $100 billion of cash in their short-term assets. On top of that, they have some other investment cash. They generate a tremendous amount of cash. And it's not something you hear a lot. So if you listen to the call, you don't hear them talking a lot about cash because they have a lot available. Versus companies during the pandemic, companies like Boeing, who were all of a sudden, all their airlines were saying, we don't want new airplanes because we're dealing with COVID. We can't invest at this time. So they end up borrowing $42 billion to kind of survive the downturn. So cash is vitally important, and cash is queen. It's vitally important for any business. As you think about profitability, there's 2 key levers that companies look at to impact profitability. One is increasing something. The other is decreasing. For those who have been in their class, what are the 2 levers? If I want to grow my profitability, what do I have to increase, or what do I have to reduce? Let's see if we can remember from the course. Yeah, I want to increase price or increase revenue. Yeah, right there. So increase my revenue, which is also known as sales. So increase my revenue. Now I can do that by increasing price, as some of you said, by charging more for my product or service. I know we're getting tired of that with inflation. Everything seems to be increasing in price. The other is to reduce your cost or your expenses as a company. That should be down here. Cost, right there, decrease cost. The second way in which you can grow your revenue is to sell more, what they call volume, right? Sell more of your products or services. Well, those levers are vitally important in business, and there's all sorts of metrics around this. Gross profit, operating profit, net profit become important, and you can find that information on the income statement. This is a metric that you'll hear companies talk about, their profitability. And can I bring in more revenue or sales than what it costs me to run the business? As long as I can do that, I'll have a profitable business that can flourish and be successful as an organization. Assets is anything a company owns or controls which has value. Just by way of review here, think of Microsoft. What do you think they have as assets? It's a technology company. What would be on their balance sheet? What are the assets of a Microsoft, would you guess? Yes, Enoch, absolutely. IP, intellectual property, absolutely is going to be part of that. Patents, there you go, Nicole. Absolutely. They also have cash. That's an asset, is it not? Data centers. There you go. They've got technology. They got software. They actually have facilities as well, buildings and stuff like that, infrastructure. But they're not a heavy asset intensive business, a tangible asset intensive business like you would see in like a manufacturing business, for example. But as you think about assets, anything I own or control without value, the key concept of assets is, how do I deploy those assets? When do I kind of hold on and strengthen my financial position versus when do I invest to try and take advantage of the next innovation or next opportunity around technology? And if you listen to Sanjay talk, he speaks to this idea of this is the next transition of technology with AI being incorporated in what we do day in and day out. And it's pretty amazing what I'm seeing today. Of course, growth is what investors expect, and then people or what makes it happen. When we talk people, we talk two groups. One is that external customer who buys or uses your product or service. The other is the internal customer. How do we get employees to execute together? Well, folks, that's a brief review of the 5 drivers. I wanted to give you that quick review to then show you how to use this first tool. The tool is called the Executive Alignment Activity, or I call it the Executive Alignment Tool. What do I mean by that? This is a tool that can help you assess the strategic focus of the company. Let me explain how it works. Basically, with the use of the 5-driver model, you can use that as a framework to kind of capture what executives are talking about. So if you listen to the call, and as CEO, she's talking about some of her key metrics are measured or key strategies. You use the 5-driver in this tool, Executive Alignment Tool, to assess what they're talking about. Here's how it works. As you're listening to that communication, every time they say something about cash, you just put a little slash mark. Every time they say something about profit, put a little slash mark. People, over time, you start to see it get pretty built out. You can even do it over here as well. At the end of it, you might say, well, Brent, I've never been through this. How do I kind of know whether or not they're talking about cash, profit, asset growth, or people? Well, one of the nice things about the tool is right in the tool, we give you a little definition of what we mean by cash. And then in addition to that, we give you, I call them trigger words. We call them examples on the document. These are the types of words I'm looking for. If I hear them talk about dividends or distribution, that's a use of cash. I'm generating cash and I'm giving it back to my investors. I'm buying back stock. I'm getting debt. These are all either sources or uses of cash. Versus if I want to look at profitability, I'm talking about, sales or revenue, pricing, volume. These are trigger words that would help you to get to that. Well, once you're done with kind of listening to the call, marking it up, the next step is this. You answer these 4 simple questions. First of all, which business driver seems to get the most attention? I love the second part of it. And why? What's unique about their business? What's going on around them? What's timing that might be? Regulatory, where you just come out of COVID, how does that impact them? Supply chain issues, etc. From there, the next step is, what were the 2 or 3 main points the executives were trying to make? Now, this is often quite easy. A lot of times they say, here's the top 3 things I want to talk about. And you can capture that. Sometimes you have to kind of listen to it and say, okay, here are the top 3 things that stood out to me. What are the goals and objectives or trends going forward? That's where they kind of shift and they say, well, where do we see ourselves going in Q3 or Q4? Or where do I see us in 2024, et cetera? And then finally, what are the key questions or concerns analysts review? The last part of this tool is once the call is done, just kind of look at what's going on with their stock price. What's the market saying about it? It'll give you a nice assessment of what's going on in the business. Well, folks, that's the tool. So here's what I want to be. For those that have been with us before, we kind of practice use that. We don't have time to go through the whole call. But what I've got is I've got a quote from Satya, and it's the Q2 quote. I apologize. We got it all done yesterday and didn't know for sure what to get. But I can't think of a better time. Now that you see this, go right after this and use the tool. Go through their Q3. You'll get the most up to date of what's going on. So here's what I want to do. Let's practice using the tool. And I want you in the chat box, as I read through it, just put in the chat box which of the 5 drivers seems to stand out. Now, to be clear, it's not an exact science. I may read something where you'll see one driver and somebody else will see something different. It's not an exact science. Like I said, we'll do about 1,000 sessions a year. And invariably, what we have is not that everybody has the exact same number of slash marks, but what we typically do is in a course, we'll have the top 2 drivers. Everybody will see them. They may not be the exact same order or the exact same number of slash marks, but they absolutely, everybody will see this is the focus of the call. So with that in mind, here we go. Open your chat box if you would. You got the 5 drivers in front of you on the slide here. And here's the first part. Mr. Satya says, as I meet with customers and partners, what's customers and partners? You might put that in the chat box. A few things are increasingly clear. Just as we saw customers accelerate their digital spend during the pandemic, we are now seeing them optimize that spend. So they've invested in a lot of technology. Let's get the most out of that technology. So which drivers are you seeing? Yeah, for sure, people. Customers and partners, those are absolutely the people. Customers. You're also seeing stuff like accelerate their digital spend. Accelerate could get into a little bit of growth. A couple of you kind of said growth there. Obviously, they're spending cash to fund that. So cash plays out in there. And how they can optimize their spend could actually impact their profitability. So you see a few different ones. Let's go to the second part of his quote. Also, organizations are exercising caution given the macro environment uncertainty. And the next major wave of computing is being born as we turn to the world's most advanced AI models into a new computing platform. Having listened to their Q3 as well, late last night, boy, this AI is exciting. So growth, definitely, I see that there. Man, if I had more time, I'd love to just have a half-hour discussion about AI and how you're using it. Give me I don't know if they can do reactions in this platform here, but in your bot, how many are using ChatGPT? Just say yes or no if you're using ChatGPT as any part to help you in your role or in other ways in your life. It is incredible what that technology is doing here. Well, folks, that's how you do it. So this idea of just kind of, you see it, you write it down. Well, let's do it again. Here's another quote from him. In this environment, we remain convinced on 3 things. This is an important time for Microsoft to work with our customers, helping them realize more value from their tech spend and building long-term loyalty and share position while internally aligning our own cost structure with our revenue growth. Very similar to what you saw in the very first part as far as customer and people for sure. Yeah, right there. Growth, talk about growth. Now, how does revenue play into that? Well, typically for me, revenue's right here. It's going to be a profit one. I put a slash there. Now, remember, increase in revenue also, though, impacts cash. So some of you may say cash as well, assuming as you collect it. Well, let me wrap up his quote here. This, in turn, sets us up to participate in the secular trend that where digital spend as a percentage of GPT is only going to increase. And lastly, we are going to lead in the AI era, knowing that maximum enterprise value gets created during platform shifts. That's a key concept. If you listen to their Q3, talks a lot about how the platform is shifting. With that as the backdrop, the Microsoft Cloud exceed $27 billion in quarterly revenue, up 22%, 29% in constant currency. They're up about the same amount in Q3 as well, their numbers. So I'll give you a little bit of that data. But yes, definitely you're talking about growth for sure. Assets, yes, this whole AI era. It is impressive. I would highly recommend listening to their Q3. They talk about using AI to program and where you just use common language to program. Now, developers have been using AI and shortcut technologies for some time. But this idea that Brent Barclay from Boise, Idaho, could actually create an app just by saying, create this type of app, and it kind of does that, a majority of that work, pretty impressive stuff as they see what they're doing. Sorry, I got so excited about this technology. It's pretty interesting. Let's get back to what we're doing here. So not only do our executive team, our CEO speak to that, but Amy Hood, their CFO, talks about it. Now, here's a shift. You kind of saw the executive leader, CEO, speak, and we got a lot of growth, a lot of people, some profits, some assets, etc. Let's look at what they saw. I'll let you read through this and just put in the chat box. What is Amy Hood talking about? Which of the drivers do you see her focused on? Take a moment to do that. Which of the 5 drivers are you seeing in that communication? I'll underline a few trigger words for me. These are all trigger words that give me, okay, I know what I need to put there. Even this is a trigger word, a decrease. We often think of growth as increase, but even a decrease is a growth. Yeah, excellent. You see a lot around growth. You see a lot around profitability. And then some of the specific numbers, right? We're talking about gross margin. That's one of the key profit measures. I'd be going right there for a profit measure. I'm seeing a lot on increase or decrease, so growth. Operating expenses are going up. Now, this is an issue for us. We saw the tech sector cut back quite a bit. And you see Microsoft also trying to mitigate their overhead costs. And they even talk about it in Q3, some of the things they did to lessen the cost side of their business as they continue to innovate. But yeah, so you see how to do it. Not only can you do it with their executive team, but often an analyst will do the same. Here's an analyst quote. I'll give you a second to read that, and then we'll move on. Or I'll just read it real quick. I'd like to follow up a little bit on the question relating to optimization. I know we saw some slowing this quarter. You are guiding to some slowing next quarter in cloud and Azure. How much of that do you believe at this point truly people optimizing? So this idea of kind of lessening their head count, what they've already bought and stepping that before that versus how much of that is due to macro factors themselves specifically impacting demand. So kind of what's the right sizing of the ship, et cetera. Well, folks, if we had more time, we'd go through the whole call. Like I said, it's about an hour call. We could go through that as you'll look at what they're trying to do. But what I did is I went through it myself. This is for Q2, what kind of stood out. And for those who've been there, you've seen this document. Here's the slash marks. Now, typically I do it. I write right on the document itself, and then I come back and fill out the tool. So I often will download the transcript and write the words right by it. I like that tactile thing. Actually, I put it on my iPad and do it with Adobe. But there's ways that you can do that. And then you'll see the ones that kind of stood out. All 4 of these kind of stood out right here, but definitely you got growth and you've got assets and people as kind of the top 3. So let me kind of share what I saw. So what you would do, you got that. And the next thing is to answer the questions. So the first question is, which business drivers seem to get the most attention and why? So let me just highlight. Like I said, I did it. We don't have time to have you do it. But my hope is by you listening today, you'll go back and listen to their Q3 and do the same activity. So which drivers seem to get the most attention? Well, obviously it was growth. Why? Well, one of it is, who are they speaking to? They're speaking to investors. So when you listen to these calls, you'll often hear them communicating about growth. Even when a company's struggling, they'll talk about, we divested this, we reorganized this way. We are now ready to grow. Investors expect growth. And so often they'll speak to growth in an earnings call as a key driver, because that's what investors are wanting to hear about. Other things, though, is they're coming out of the pandemic. A lot of money is being spent on technology. And how can we optimize it in this new age of kind of hybrid workforce, collaborative kind of resources, being able to make decisions faster with more analytics or more assessment, and how AI can help with that. And then basically another reason they're talking about growth is their numbers grew. If you look at their numbers, and this is why I love the slide decks, is they give a lot of that data. So if you look at their numbers, now, of course, this is Q2. You see some really good growth numbers. Revenue's up about 7. This is constant currency, but growth up 2%. If you just look at the numbers themselves, what does it mean by constant currency? What that is obviously Microsoft transacts all over the world. And so as the US dollar gets stronger and stronger, everything gets converted back to US dollars. So you may have an increase in revenue in, say, South America, for example, but then when you bring it into US dollars, because you don't generate as many US dollars because the currency has changed. And so that's what this is. They're saying a 2% growth on revenue. Now, guys, this is 2% on 50 billion-ish. This is what's amazing. We think 2%, that's not very much. But if you look at that, we're talking 2% on a 50 billion plus company. That's pretty significant dollars there. Or if you look at it constant currency, meaning take out the foreign exchange implications, it's about a 7%. Then you look down here, you got gross margin. You got some great numbers as they look at that. Now, not only they do that for the quarter, I went ahead and pulled Q3. I know I shouldn't have done this because I might confuse people, but I thought, well, hey, let's pull it in. Here's where they are the end of Q3, up 7% on the quarterly numbers, and then up 10% on that constant currency. So you're seeing growth in their profitability metrics. I mean, across the board. Why are they talking about? Because they actually grew, and they've had success in growing quarter over quarter, and particularly a lot of growth during the pandemic. And now you're seeing this incremental growth. Well, so the second driver that seemed to stand out to me, and I wanted to highlight, was their assets as well. Various revenue drivers for Microsoft are all growing. So it's not just one segment of the business. They got commercial. They've got individual consumers like you and I getting our Microsoft 365, right? They're also innovation with their cloud resources. They're doing this whole open AI partnership and what that's doing for the business. So a lot of new technologies, new innovation. They have a technology, it's called Copilot, what helps programmers to do development on Azure, a number of resources that they have. New products, of course, the AI was a big focus. Office and LinkedIn was a big part of their conversation, what's happening in each of these organizations. And you'll see the same thing in Q3. So some of the highlights, as you look at Q2, some of the things that kind of stood out, well, from a commercial products base, you see everything's going up. Nice growth on those. Consumer, that's to the individual. See a little bit of dip there. But we do have a look at the 63. Basically, why are they talking about growth? Why are they talking about asset? They got significant performance quarter over quarter, year over year on all their products, and that's what they're showing in their numbers. So, what were the 2 or 3 main points of the executives? Now, I did 4. I know I said 2 to 3. One is an overarching message, and then the other is 3 specific things they highlight, which, by the way, they repeat in Q3 again with a little bit more clarity around the AI component of it. So obviously, as you look at strong quarterly performance for 6 months, it's so strong that they're increasing their guidance. Now, think about that. If you're a CEO and you go to the market and say, here's what I'm going to hit, I'm going to do somewhere between 52.35 billion up to 53.35. That's your guesstimate, and you say, you know what? It's going to be better than that. I'm willing to increase that. Now, it's only by about 15 cents increase, but that's a positive message to the market. We're doing so well that we can even predict we're going to do even better than we thought we would. So overall results for Q2, and what will be awesome is to have you go and look at Q3. I don't have time to do it, but it just all came out last night and this morning. See if they really did perform at the level that they said they would perform. And it was pretty good numbers for sure. So the other 3 things they talked about, 2 or 3 key messages: innovations, cloud, AI, ChatGPT. So this idea of innovation, new technology, new innovation. Think of how Team has advanced. Team is now looks very similar, by the way, to Zoom and how they provide things, but how they've advanced from a collaboration tool to a presentation tool, the new innovations around LinkedIn, and how AI can impact all of these. Many solutions to solve the technology needs for individuals, companies in the world, and adding and adapting for the future, kind of their key messages that they talked about. So what are the goals and trends moving forward? We remain convicted
That's the wrong word. We don't remain convicted. We remain convinced, my apologies, on three things. This is an important time for Microsoft to work with our customers, helping them realize more value from their tech spend and building long-term loyalty and shared position while internally aligning our own cost and structure with our revenue growth. This aligning cost structure is what the tech industry has been doing, kind of pulling back on some of their investments, trying to have a more balance between the growth in your revenue and the cost to grow that revenue. Second point, this in turn sets us up to participate in the secular trend where digital spend as a percentage of GDP will only increase. And then lastly, and this was kind of a small bullet in Q2. When you listen to Q3, this is a major part of what they talk about. And lastly, we're going to lead in the AI era, knowing that maximum enterprise value gets created during platform shifts. Think of AI as a platform shift. Imagine now when you do a search engine, it's able to capture like condensed information, and rather than just an SEO component to it, be able to really understand what you're asking and give you the best information at the right time or where to go to find that information. Imagine from a programming capability to literally, as they describe in Q3, the ability to use natural language to actually program an application. This is incredible shifts that they're talking about. Thinking about your databases and your technology, the cloud technology, how to make that more efficient and have an AI to help you to make predictive models that would help you to make it more efficient and more effective. That's what they're talking about. With that as the backdrop, the Microsoft Cloud exceed $27 billion in quarterly revenue, up 22% and 29% as constant currency. So the last thing is what key questions were asked. Well, obviously, OpenAI investment, the whole AI platform, where they've actually been partnered for over 3 years. A lot of us are becoming more familiar because ChatGPT has entered the market. We're all seeing this. But yet Microsoft has been a partner with them since for 3.5 years, if I remember correctly. So a lot of conversations, questions around that. Overall macro view, where do you see the industry going? And that whole idea of what we just talked about, this platform shift was a big part of their answer on that. Optimization impact on revenue generation. So how does that, as you get more optimizing, more efficient what you do, what does that do to Microsoft's revenue generation was a question that was asked. And then cost reduction in headcount. The whole technology industry has ramped up for growth and opportunity. And you see a lot of tech companies reducing. You saw Google, for example, reducing the number of employees. As you look at competition, inflationary constraints, a number of factors impacting that. Well, folks, that is the tool called the executive alignment. So now what do I know? Well, what do I understand about it? They're performing very well, generating a lot of profitability, a lot of cash, etc. They got multiple technologies. They're not just Windows. They're not just 365. They're not just their cloud. There's multiple technologies that they're looking for this advancement, this kind of platform advancement where we shift platforms to where the whole way we do things different. One of my colleagues said it this way. I love the way he says it. For those of us who are a little more seasoned, have a little more, you remember when Pong came out, the game Pong? That was pretty innovative at the time. This ball bouncing around, hitting it back, kind of like a tennis thing, versus the gaming of today. ChatGPT, and my colleague's perspective, is kind of the Pong of what AI can do in the future. It's pretty interesting. In fact, in some cases, maybe a little concerning as to what that will look like. But a big part of their investment is how to make technology transition the world. How do we help it to make us more efficient, more effective, generate more profitability, have a greater lifestyle? A lot of emphasis around those things. So with that in mind, let's look at the numbers. The next tool that I provide is called the Navigating the Financial tool. With this tool and any company's financials, you can quickly assess it. Now, for those who have been through this course, hopefully many of these terms are somewhat familiar. Well, if not, go to Bing, go to Google, and do a search to get familiar with them, or come take our online self-paced learning. In a few hours, you'll get the clarity around what these key metrics are. But what I love about this tool, for those who have been through our class and have seen our tool before, you'll remember it brings everything we talk about in our program into one place. You have the 5 drivers every company focuses on. You have the key metrics that many companies talk about. You also bring in the financial statements, and then how do you assess the financial statements? So here's how it works. Basically, these metrics right here are the most common metrics every company would use or look at least these metrics. Now, for some of you are different companies, you may find different metrics. For example, around profitability, you might see something like EBIT or earnings before interest and taxes. You might see stuff instead of return on asset calculation, you might see something like ROIC, return on invested capital. These are variations of these types of metrics. So if you look at your company, just figure out what metrics they are, and you can still do an EBIT margin by just taking the EBIT number, divide it by your revenue, and you'll get it. But this tool is a very simplified tool to help people quickly assess their financial performance. Now, the genius of it is it tells you what line items should you look for. Not only what line items, but what statement should you go to find answers to these financial metrics or measures. So let's practice make sure you understand how to use this tool. And the way I want to do that is in the chat box. Let's just go through one. If we wanted to get cash and cash equivalent based on this tool, where should I go to look for this metric? What statement should I go to? Absolutely. I'm going to go to the balance sheet. Now, you don't have the balance sheet. If you wanted to, you could go into Google, type in Q2 2022 Microsoft financial statements, and you would get them. But I'm going to give them to you. So here we go. We got cash and cash equivalents. So all you're going to do is here's the balance sheet. Of course, cash is going to be part of my assets right there. So I'm looking for cash and cash equivalent as a line item. You see it on the screen, put it in the chat box. How much cash and cash equivalent did Microsoft have on hand at the end of their Q2, which is December 31st? How much cash did that? There you go. Excellent. Right there. 15,646. There you go. I got that. Well, the next one I want to get is their cash from operations. What statement am I going to go to? Just practice using it. Put in the chat box. This is the engagement time. Yep, I'm gonna go to the cash flow statement right here. See, cash flow statement. Again, there's no calculation. I'm just gonna find the number, put it in there. So I come in here, and the number I'm looking at is called net cash from operations, right there. Now I can do it on a 3-month calculation, or I could do it on the 6-month. For purpose of this first one, I'm doing it on the quarterly number. So let's pull just the quarterly number, which is right there. Now, what does this represent? Now, just for those who have been through our class, you'll remember this is the cash, the difference between all the cash that came in from providing their products or services, minus all the cash that came out to run their business. The difference of that, what's left over is $11,173 billion. In the first half of the year, $34 billion. Guys, this is after they've paid all their employees. This is after they've paid all their utilities. This is the cash that's left over, $34 billion. Just to give you a comparison, oil and gas companies like your Exxon, your Shells, big players like that, in their best years, they're about $45 billion for a full year. Now, right now, oil's up, so they actually are about $30 billion for first half of the year. But this is incredible numbers for sure. Okay, let's see here. It says in millions top left, but you keep, oh yeah, great question. So it says in millions top left right here. So you see that in millions. I keep saying billions. Well, I could say 11,173 millions, because that's what it is. You'd add the 3 zeros right there. All I'm doing is I'm just, because it's more than 1,000 of these, I'm now talking billions. So that's what I'm saying there. So so something like right here, that's 243 million is correct. But once you get up here, we spent or we increased our receivables by 3,162. Hopefully that makes sense for you, Iris. Let me know if I can give any more clarity there. Okay, so we got 2 of them. Let's do one. We have to do a calculation, then we're going to move forward. We only got about 9 minutes left. So here we go. Let's get that total revenue quickly in the chat box. Where am I going to find it? Right here. In fact, all my profit measures are going to be found where? In the income statement. Thank you, Pretty. Thank you for that. Here we go. So let's look at that. Here's my income statement. We're going to do the quarterly numbers again. So I want to get my revenue, total revenue. I got a product revenue. I got a service revenue. I want a total revenue. Here's the number right here. I bring that over, 52,747,000,000. Now I got to get my net income, going to that same statement. Net income is right here. Put in the chat box. For the quarterly numbers, how much net income did Microsoft generate? 16,427. Now, just real quickly, what do they want to do year over year? You want to increase that? You want to decrease that? Or you know what, Brent? It kind of depends. Their profitability. What do they want to do year over year? It's not a trick question, I promise. Yeah, we want to increase that. Look what's happened. They've decreased this. This is where tech companies are dealing with some challenges. They invested in cost to expand and grow, but inflation's creeping in. So their cost is going up. If I remember right, this goes up about 2 or 3%. Oh, I did the full year numbers. So this one right here goes up 6%, or their revenue goes up 6%, but the costs go up 7.6%. So my costs are going up at a greater rate than what I'm able to generate in revenue. So that's going to cause a reduction in my profitability. Not what we like to do, and they're trying to fix that. Yeah, R&D investment, but the overall costs have gone up. Cost of employees are going up. All the things, inflation is impacting. Yes, Joseph, Enoch, you're both right. They got some R&D expense as they look to spend more. You can see that here. But right here, this is the direct cost. This is the direct cost of providing their product or service. That's what I was talking about, which has nothing to do with the R&D. So yeah, it's inflationary, as Joseph's kind of describing. Well, folks, we can do a calculation. Let's do one calculation. Here, what we're going to do. I take that 16,425 divided by my 52747. Now you grab your $1,000 calculator, right? We all have the $1,000 calculator. That's going to give us, let's see, where's cost of employee in the income statement? SG&A. Great question. So where's the cost of employees? Any direct cost. So going back to that statement real quick, any direct cost of providing that product. So programming for an application, any of that stuff is going to go right here. And then you have some labor cost right here for selling general administrative expenses. But you also have, this is the overhead cost. Think of this as overhead, right? This is HR, IT, executive team, accounting, et cetera, is right there. Let me know if that answers your question, AJ. Okay, so here we go, 31.1%. Well, folks, that's how you do the tool. If we had more time, I'd have you do the whole calculation. And I highly recommend you do this you can come back and do Q2. I'll take a picture of the screen right here. You have the numbers. Here's their numbers for Q2. But then go do it on their Q3 numbers. See if they truly are better as they were suggesting. So you can use this tool to look at a specific company, quarter over quarter numbers. But you'll see in their statements, they give the year-to-date numbers. So I can look at their 6 months numbers of 2023 versus their 6 month numbers of 2023. I'll notice a few things. Their margins were a little stronger back in 2022 than what we're seeing here. That's that inflationary component we're dealing with. Well, we can also look at Microsoft's numbers in relationship to a competitor. Here's Oracle's numbers. Obviously, much more revenue generation for 6 months of the year versus Oracle's number, much bigger than Oracle. But you can kind of see where their numbers are. Or you can do it on any company. For those that were with us last month, Shopify was who we looked at last month. You'll see very different as you look at those numbers. Well, folks, that's how I look at the numbers. So I've analyzed. I understand their strategic focus, the big focus on optimizing all the tech spend that their customers have been doing, being able to innovate with new technologies and how AI can play a role in that. Their financial performance is very strong, although they are dealing with some inflationary perspectives, but overall their numbers look really good. So now what do I do with it? The last part of it is to apply. Here at Acumen Learning, we've had a great chance to work with 33 of the Fortune 50. And one of the key things why companies keep coming back is because we really move the needle. By applying, by taking what they learn and using it beyond the course. That's what we do. We had a company, unbeknownst to us, without our involvement, get a third-party group to say, hey, I want to do an ROI on our investment with Acumen Learning. They found over 300% return on their investment. But these are the types of outcomes that people get by using these tools. 84% improved their performance of your business and function. 81% increased their collaboration, being able to work across different functions. 77% improved upward communication, your ability to articulate to your managers, be able to speak the language of what they're driving towards. 77% improved employee engagement. 75% increased business focus. and 84% improved their teamwork. The reason I bring this up is to show you that application gets these types of results. And as you do this, my guarantee to you, as you do this 2 to 3 quarters, you'll absolutely be able to differentiate. How can I say that? Differentiate yourself. Let me say that's my idle roots coming out in a way that will be absolutely valued for your credibility, your career, and your company. So the last part of it is, how do I take this and do something with it? To know and not to know is not to know. Maybe your mom said that, right? To know and not do anything with it. So the last part of the tool is application. The first thing starts with what stood out to you. Boy, there's tons of stuff that stood out to me. I found insightful to see all the areas Microsoft plays in. Obviously, these on the left, I'm pretty familiar with, along with this, but data analytics, this AI was new to me. What they're doing, their investment with OpenAI was interesting to see what they're doing, and not just what I see as the application, how they're integrating that technology in search functions on Bing, how they're using it to help developers develop things quicker, faster, more efficiently. It's incredible what they're doing there. And then, of course, they're innovating and adopting was something that was in there. They're adopting their technologies like Windows, Teams, Microsoft 365, all this stuff that they're adapting, and they're innovating along with that. So what would I do with this? So based upon what I learned, the most important part of this tool is, what are you going to do about it? Here's 3 things that I would do. I'm a consultant. We work with many great companies. I want to look at their comparison to some of the other competitors. How are they competing with Google? How is Bing competing with Google with this whole AI component? Are more and more people seeing that opportunity shifting over? Obviously, Google's owned the market for years. I want to share this information and my findings with consultants that I work with, as well as clients and new customers. How is Microsoft innovating the new business model that we're dealing with today? Last thing I would want to do is I want to determine how we can help Microsoft employees. If you're part of Microsoft, give us a call. We want to work with you. We want to learn what you're doing and help your employees understand how they can make an impact in your business. The last part of it is, once you've done that, is to have a conversation. Once you've done all this work, sit down with your manager. If you analyze your own company, sit down with your manager and have a conversation. Here's what I heard, and here's what I think we should do as an organization. That will show initiative, and it'll also make sure you're aligned with what your organization is trying to focus on. If you analyze a customer or a partner, meet with a sales manager, account team, be able to share. Here's what I learned about our customer or competitor. Here's how we think about that. The last part is the competitor, benchmark it, how we are different, how we are similar within the organization here. It looks like we lost my camera. That's okay. I'm back, but hopefully you still have my audio. That's the last part of the tool. Well, folks, that's the tool, the process: prepare, analyze, and apply. Now, once you've done this once, step 2 of the prepare phase becomes very easy, because all you do is review your notes from the prior quarter, what you found in that information. So, here's my question to you as we wrap up. Put in the chat box, as you were to take this tool and use it, where would you use it? How many of you use it for the company you work for? Hey, I want to use it to assess a company I sell to, compete against, partner with, invest in, interested in, or Microsoft. Any of those. Looking at Microsoft's third quarter. Maybe you want to look at Microsoft for third quarter. Absolutely useful. Well, folks, here's how you get to it. Go to acumenlearning.com. We just put it in the chat box. It's right there for you. Go ahead and do that. Do that assessment. Go to Q3 numbers. It's all available. As of this morning, it's all there. It's a great time to see how is it similar to what I just shared with you here. And then we're coming back May 31st. And on May 31st, we are looking at Berkshire Hathaway. Now, this is going to be one of the most interesting companies to look at, because their investor page is not very solid, so to speak. But one of the most well-known companies. This is Warren Buffett's company. We've had many of you ask for it. Their investment firm and the companies they invest with, their strategy, it's incredible. And we'll look at their annual information, which will be quite engaging. So hopefully you'll come and be a part of that. It'll be a great session. Well, folks, that is the tool. Thank you so much for your time. It's been good to have you here. We'll open it up for any questions you might have. If not, thank you very much and have a great day. I was thinking we had a question here, but then everybody said thank you and it dropped. Was there a question? Brent, I think How can we know which companies are up in the next session? Oh, great question. So Stephanie asked the question of how can you know what companies are coming next? If you go to our website, in fact, can we put in the chat box? We're going to put in the chat box. Go to our website. It's in webinars. And you'll see there's 2 common webinars we do every month. One is how to listen to earnings call, what companies are coming up. And there I'll have a few of the next couple months are posted. And then the other one is a brief look at our 5-driver model. It's open to anybody. It's a great place. But if you're interested in maybe I want to look at this for my team, it's a great way to kind of kick the tires a little bit, where our CEO and founder, actually the author of our books, Kevin Cope, will walk through the 5 drivers in about a 45, 50-minute session. It's a nice overview for it. So I highly recommend that. Stephanie, hopefully that's helpful to you. It looks like we got it in the link. So there you go. There's the webinar schedule. We only do about a quarter out because we often will listen to you. What companies do you want us to look at? In fact, that Berkshire Hathaway's been on the course for on the list for a number of years. The challenge is to kind of navigate their websites a little bit challenging. They're a little bit behind the time on their investor relation page. But we got enough demand. We said, let's just do it and we'll walk through it because their year end, if you don't know, Berkshire Hathaway's letter from their CEO to the market is probably one of the most read letters of all companies. Most CEOs of the Fortune 500 are going to read it. Most people in the business world will read it because they're known as individuals who really understand business. And so it's just a great, we won't get a chance to go through the whole letter for sure, but we'll pull some of that detail and it'll be helpful to kind of how to assess that will be helpful. Well, folks, thank you very much for your time. Team, was there any other questions I missed as we went through, or did we catch them as we were going? Okay, it looks like I'm getting thumbs up. Well, folks, thank you so much for your time. It's been great. Look forward to seeing you next month when we get a chance to look at Berkshire Hathaway. Thank you much and have a great day.